Emma stood behind the counter, twirling a spoon in a latte that had gone cold. The grinder roared in the background, blending with the chatter of regulars at the corner table. But her mind wasn't here. It was somewhere else. Richard Rogers Theater, New York, July, where the stage lights would blaze and Lin-Manuel Miranda's voice would ring out. She smiled, picturing her mom, Diane, beaming as my shot filled the air. It would be the perfect moment, the perfect gift, to thank the woman who'd given her everything. Emma hadn't grown up with much. Their home in a Chicago suburb was a cramped two-room apartment, its walls stained, its winters brutal with a rattling old heater. Her dad walked out when she was 3, leaving Diane with a toddler and a pile of bills. Her mom never complained. She worked the assembly line by day, then hustled at a laundromat by night, her hands rough from chemicals. But every year, no matter how tight money got, Diane saved up to take Emma to a musical. They'd sit in the nosebleed seats, sometimes barely seeing the stage, but to Emma, it was everything. The lights, the songs, her mom's smile. Those were the treasures of her scrappy childhood. Emma, snap out of it. Table 5's waiting for their cappuccino. Jake hollered from behind the counter, yanking her back to reality. Jake, with his messy hair and cheeky grin, was her best friend at this little coffee shop. He loved teasing her about being a mama's girl, but his eyes sparkled with admiration when she talked about Diane. All right, Emma muttered, pouring hot milk into a cup. But she couldn't stop herself from glancing at her phone. The email confirming her Hamilton tickets was still there, like a promise. She'd been saving since December, picking up extra shifts, skipping nights out, even selling the silver necklace her mom gave her for her 18th birthday. $600 for 2 tickets wasn't pocket change, but to Emma, it was worth every penny. She had a plan. On Diane's birthday, 2 months from now, she'd hand her an envelope with the tickets and say, "Mom, we're going to New York." Look at that grin. Thinking about your mom again, huh? Jake winked, wiping down the counter. Yeah, I just booked the tickets. Hamilton, July. Mom's gonna lose it, Emma whispered, unable to hide her excitement. Wow, you're the real deal, a rare good kid. I bet Diane'll cry her eyes out. Jake laughed. Lila, the new girl, breezed in from the back door, her blonde hair gleaming under the shop's lights. She'd only been here a few weeks, but had clicked with Emma fast. Lila had a way of asking about her life, from little things to big dreams. Today, she wore a tight sweater and carried a fancy takeaway cup from some upscale place. What's that about Hamilton? She asked, her voice curious. Emma hesitated. She hadn't planned to tell anyone but Jake, but Lila had a knack for drawing her out. I got tickets for my mom. I'm surprising her. Lila's eyes widened. Oh my gosh, Emma, that's amazing. Those tickets are pricey, right? Where'd you get them? An official site. Had to be careful not to get scammed, Emma said with a grin, pulling up the email on her phone to show Lila. See, the e-tickets are in my account now. Lila leaned in, her eyes glinting. Smart move. But are you sure that account's secure? I've heard e-tickets can get hacked so easily. If you want, I could store them in my account for you. I've got better security software. Emma blinked. Really? I think it's fine, though. Trust me, I lost tickets once. It sucked. Send me your login. I'll check it for you, Lila said, her tone honey-sweet. Jake frowned, about to say something, but Emma nodded. Okay, you're probably right. Thanks, Lila. She texted the info, feeling relieved to have a friend looking out for her. 2 days later, it all fell apart. Emma was wiping tables when her phone buzzed. An email from the ticket site. Notice, your tickets have been transferred to another account. Her heart stopped. She opened the app, tried to log in, wrong password. Panicking, she called Lila. No answer. She rushed to Jake, still at the counter, and stammered out what happened. Hold on, let me see, Jake said, grabbing her phone. His brow furrowed. Lila logged out of the shop system this morning. She didn't show up for her shift. Emma felt the floor tilt. She dialed customer support, her voice shaking. After 20 agonizing minutes, the rep sighed. I'm sorry, Miss Harper. Your tickets were resold on the secondary market. We can't refund or recover them. $600. Months of saving. Her mom's dream. Gone because she'd trusted the wrong person. Emma trudged home, her feet heavy. Her tiny apartment was dark, lit only by streetlights filtering through the window. She sank onto the couch, clutching an old photo frame. Her and Diane at a Wicked show when she was 12. Diane's smile glowed in the picture, her hair still jet black, her eyes twinkling with joy. Emma, tiny then, held a torn ticket stub as a keepsake. Tears splashed onto the glass. "I'm so stupid," she whispered. She'd wanted to make her mom proud, but now she had nothing. Diane couldn't know. Her mom would blame herself, say Emma shouldn't have tried so hard for her. No, Emma couldn't let that happen. She wiped her eyes and opened her laptop. Lila might have taken her tickets, but she wouldn't let her mom's dream die like this. "I'll find you, Lila," she muttered, fingers tapping fast on the keys. "And I'll take back what's ours." The screen's glow lit her tear-streaked face, a spark of resolve flashing in her eyes. Emma's journey was just beginning. Emma Harper had never been one for New Year's resolutions. They felt like promises too fragile to keep, especially in a life stitched together from thrift store clothes and overtime checks. But on January 3rd, 2025, standing behind the counter at Brew Haven with coffee grounds dusting her apron, she met Jake Torres. And for the first time, she thought maybe fate had made a resolution for her. He was 32, tall enough that she had to tilt her head to meet his eyes, with a mop of dark hair that fell just shy of messy. He'd walked into the shop that day, ordered a black coffee with a grin that could melt ice, and cracked a joke about the weather, something dumb about Chicago winters being nature's revenge. Emma laughed, louder than she meant to, and that was it. 2 weeks later, they were on their first date. Burgers at a dive bar, his knee brushing hers under the table, her heart doing flips she hadn't felt since high school. Jake was funny, easygoing, the kind of guy who could talk to anyone about anything. But it was his smile that got her, a slow, warm curve that made her feel seen, like she wasn't just the barista scraping by, but someone worth knowing. They'd been dating for 5 months now, and it was good, better than good. Jake didn't mind that she lived in a shoebox apartment with peeling paint, or that she sometimes smelled like espresso grounds after a long shift. He listened when she talked, really listened, and that was rare. She'd told him everything. About her mom, Diane, the woman who'd raised her alone after her dad bailed when she was 3. About the years of Diane working 2 jobs, factory shifts and late-night laundromat runs, to keep them afloat. About the musicals, their one glittering escape each year. Emma had painted the picture for him. 6-year-old her clutching Diane's hand at a creaky community theater Annie. 9-year-old her sobbing through Les Miserables. 15-year-old her whispering lines from Wicked in the dark as Diane squeezed her arm. Those nights were sacred, a thread of joy woven through a childhood of ramen dinners and secondhand shoes. Jake got it, or so she thought. One night, sprawled on her lumpy couch with a pizza box between them, she'd told him about the Hamilton tickets. It had slipped out, her excitement bubbling over like a pot left too long on the stove. "I've been saving since last year," she'd said, her voice bright. $600, 2 seats, Center Orchestra, July 12th. "It's for Mom's birthday. She's obsessed with the soundtrack. I want her to see it live, you know? It's our big dream." She'd shown him the email on her phone, the confirmation from the official ticket site, her proof of victory after months of sacrifice. Extra shifts, no new clothes, selling that silver necklace Diane had given her at 18. Jake had leaned in, his hazel eyes scanning the screen. "That's incredible, Em," he'd said, nodding. "I get it. Those nights with your mom, they're special. You're a hell of a daughter." His hand had found hers, warm and steady, and she'd thought, "Wow, I've finally found someone who respects what matters to me." For a moment, she'd let herself imagine it. Her and Jake and Diane, maybe even all 3 of them together in New York, laughing over overpriced theater snacks. It felt right. But that was before the Tony Awards night, June 8th, 2025, a night that would unravel everything she believed about him. It started innocently enough. Emma had the night off from Brew Haven, a rare Sunday freebie she'd planned to spend with Jake. The Tonys were airing live, and she'd been buzzing about it all week. Musicals were her language, her lifeline, and she'd begged Jake to watch with her. "It's not just awards," she'd told him, curling up on his couch with a bowl of popcorn. "It's like a sneak peek of what Mom and I will see in July. Plus, Hamilton might perform. They're doing a revival this year." Jake had groaned, teasing her about her theater nerd side, but he'd agreed, slinging an arm around her as the broadcast began. The living room was dim, lit only by the flicker of his secondhand TV and a string of Christmas lights he'd never bothered to take down. Emma nestled into him, her head on his chest, the popcorn bowl balanced on her lap. The show opened with a medley. Hadestown, 6, a new play she hadn't heard of, and she couldn't stop grinning. "This is what I live for," she murmured, glancing up at Jake. He smiled back, that melting smile, and squeezed her shoulder. "You're cute when you geek out," he said, and she felt a glow spread through her chest. Halfway through, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She ignored it, probably just a work text about tomorrow's schedule. But then it buzzed again and again, insistent. Jake nudged her. "You gonna check that? Someone's desperate." "Fine," she sighed, reaching for it. The screen lit up with an email from the ticket site, subject line, "Urgent, account activity alert." Her stomach tightened. She opened it, scanning the words, "Your tickets for Hamilton, July 12th, have been transferred to another account." Her breath caught. "What the hell?" she whispered, sitting up so fast the popcorn spilled onto the floor. Jake frowned, leaning over. "What's wrong?" "My tickets. They're gone," she said, her voice trembling as she logged into the ticket app. "Password rejected." She tried again, fingers shaking. "Nothing. This can't be happening." She clicked the email link, a cold sweat prickling her skin. The transfer had happened 10 minutes ago, right as they'd been watching the Tonys. "Someone hacked me," she said, louder now, panic rising. "Jake, the tickets for Mom. They're gone." "Whoa, slow down," he said, sitting up too. "Hacked? How?" "I don't know." She scrolled back to the confirmation email from months ago, the one she'd shown him that night on her couch. Her account had two-factor authentication. She'd set it up herself. No one had her password. No one except. Her eyes flicked to Jake, still beside her, his face a mask of concern. "Did you tell anyone about this?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Me? No," he said, holding up his hands. "Why would I?" "I showed you the email," she said, her mind racing. "You saw the account info, the dates. Did you screenshot it or something?" "Emma, come on." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "You think I'd mess with your tickets? I know what they mean to you." She wanted to believe him. His smile was still there, softer now, pleading. But something felt off. His eyes didn't quite meet hers. His hands fidgeted in his lap. The TV blared on, a Hamilton cast member belting "You'll Be Back," mocking her with every note. She grabbed her phone and called the ticket site's support line, pacing Jake's cramped living room as the hold music droned. 20 minutes later, a tired-sounding rep confirmed her worst fear. The tickets had been resold on a secondary market. Non-recoverable. Non-refundable. $600, her mom's dream, vanished. Emma hung up, her knees buckling. She sank onto the couch, staring at the popcorn scattered across the rug. Jake knelt in front of her, his hands on her shoulders. I'm so sorry. We'll figure this out, okay? Maybe it was a glitch." "It wasn't a glitch," she snapped, pulling away. "Someone logged in. Someone new." Her voice broke, tears burning her eyes. She looked at him, really looked, and saw it. The flicker of unease, the way his jaw tightened. "Jake," she said, barely a whisper, "did you do this?" He froze, then stood, running a hand through his hair. "You're serious? You think I'd screw you over like that?" "I don't know what to think," she shouted, standing too. "I trusted you. I told you everything, about Mom, the tickets, how much it meant. And now it's gone, right after I showed you." "Emma, I didn't," he started, but she cut him off, grabbing her bag. "I need to go," she said, her voice cracking. She stumbled out of his apartment, the Tony Awards still echoing behind her, a cruel soundtrack to her unraveling world. Back in her own place, she collapsed onto her bed, clutching a photo of her and Diane at Wicked years ago. Her mom's smile stared back, trusting, proud. Emma couldn't tell her, not yet. But as sobs shook her, one thought burned clear. She'd find out what Jake had done. She'd get those tickets back. For Mom. Emma Harper had always believed that love, real love, meant knowing someone's heart, the parts they kept tucked away from the world. By June 2025, 5 months into dating Jake Torres, she thought she'd found that with him. He was 32, tall and lean with a smile that could unravel her defenses, and he'd slipped into her life like he'd always belonged there. They'd met in January at Brew Haven, the coffee shop where she worked, and since then, he'd become her safe harbor, someone who laughed at her quirks, who didn't judge her for her chipped mugs or her obsession with musicals. She'd told him about her mom, Diane, about their tradition of scraping by for one dazzling night at the theater each year, about the Hamilton tickets she'd saved for since last year. $600, 2 center orchestra seats for July 12th, a birthday gift for Diane that meant more to Emma than anything. Jake had listened, nodded, even squeezed her hand when she showed him the confirmation email. "You're amazing, Em," he'd said. She'd believed him. But on the night of the Tony Awards, June 8th, 2025, that belief started to crack. It was a rare Sunday off for Emma, and she'd begged Jake to watch the Tonys with her at his place. "It's not just some stuffy awards show," she'd told him, hauling a bag of popcorn in her excitement through his apartment door. "It's a preview of what Mom and I will see in July. Hamilton might even perform. They're reviving it this year." Jake had rolled his eyes, muttering about her theater nerd energy, but he'd caved, tugging her onto his beat-up leather couch with a grin. The living room was a mess of mismatched furniture and half-dead plants, lit by a TV he'd scored off Craigslist and a string of Christmas lights he swore he'd take down eventually. Emma didn't care. She nestled into his side, his arm draped over her shoulders, the popcorn bowl warm on her lap. The broadcast kicked off with a burst of color, Hadestown's haunting melodies, 6 electric queens, and she felt alive, buzzing with anticipation. "See," she said, nudging him as the first commercial break hit. "This is why I love musicals. It's magic. You're magic," Jake murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. She smiled, her chest light, and pulled out her phone to scroll through Twitter, soaking in the live reactions to the show. That's when she heard it, his voice, low and hushed, coming from the kitchen. Jake had slipped away during the break, phone pressed to his ear. Emma hadn't thought much of it. He'd said he needed to grab a beer, but now, with the TV muted, his words drifted through the open doorway. "Don't worry, Sarah," he was saying, his tone soft, almost coaxing. "I'll give you Emma's Hamilton tickets. You need a night out, something to take your mind off everything." Emma froze, her thumb hovering over her screen. Sarah, Jake's younger sister, 27, fresh off a messy divorce, was a name she knew well. Jake talked about her often, how she'd been struggling since her ex walked out, how she'd moved back to Chicago to crash at their mom's place, how she cried on his shoulder at least once a week. Emma had met her once, a quiet girl with tired eyes and a forced smile, and she'd felt a pang of sympathy. But this? Her tickets? The ones she'd poured her soul into? She set her phone down, her pulse thudding in her ears, and craned her neck to listen. "Yeah, I know it's rough," Jake went on. "You deserve something good, sis. I've got it covered." Emma's mouth went dry. She stood, the popcorn bowl tipping slightly, and stepped toward the kitchen. Jake's back was to her, one hand gripping the fridge door, the other holding his phone. "Jake," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "What did you just say?" He spun around, eyes wide for a split second before his face smoothed into a grin. Too quick, too easy. "Hey, Em," he said, lowering the phone. "Just chatting with Sarah? You need anything?" "No, I heard you," she said, crossing her arms. "Something about my Hamilton tickets." "What was that?" Jake laughed, a short, awkward burst, and waved a hand. "Oh, that? I was just messing around. You know, trying to cheer her up. She's been a wreck lately. Cheer her up with my tickets." Emma's voice rose, disbelief threading through it. She searched his face, waiting for the punchline, the reassurance, but his grin faltered, and he glanced away. "Jake, those are for Mom. You know that. You know what they mean to me." "I do," he said quickly, stepping closer. "Come on, Em, it was a joke. I wouldn't touch your tickets. She's in a bad place. I was throwing out ideas." Emma stared at him, her stomach twisting. His hazel eyes held hers now, steady and warm, the way they always did when he talked her down from a bad day. She wanted to believe him. God, she did. They'd built something real these past 5 months, hadn't they? Late-night talks, lazy Sundays, the way he'd held her when she cried about a rough shift. But that word, joke, felt flimsy, like a paper shield against the doubt creeping in. "Okay," she said finally, her voice tight. "If it's a joke, fine. Just don't say stuff like that. It's not funny." "Got it," he said, pulling her into a quick hug. "Sorry, babe. Let's get back to your theater thing." He kissed her forehead, and she let him lead her back to the couch, the popcorn cold now, the Tonys blaring back to life. But the ease she'd felt earlier was gone, replaced by a nagging ache she couldn't shake. The rest of the night blurred. Performances, applause, Jake's arm around her. But her mind kept replaying his words. I'll give you Emma's Hamilton tickets. A joke? Maybe. Sarah was struggling. Jake had told her how desperate he felt to help. But those tickets weren't his to offer, joke or not. They were hers and Diane's. Earned through months of skipped meals, extra hours, selling that damn necklace. She glanced at Jake, laughing at some host's quip, and tried to push it down. He'd explain later, she told herself. He'd make it right. He didn't. 2 hours later, the credits rolled, and Jake stretched, yawning. Good stuff, he said, oblivious to the storm brewing in her chest. You happy now, theater nerd? Yeah, she lied, forcing a smile. Her phone buzzed, an email. She opened it, expecting spam, but the subject line stopped her cold. Urgent. Account activity alert. Her hands shook as she tapped it open. Your tickets for Hamilton, July 12th, have been transferred to another account. Time of transfer, 9:47 p.m. 9 minutes ago, while they've been sitting here. Jake, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the TV's outro music. They're gone. What's gone? He asked, frowning as he leaned over. The tickets, she said, louder now, shoving the phone at him. Someone transferred them. They're gone. His eyes scanned the screen, and for a moment, she thought she saw something, guilt, panic, flicker across his face. Then it was gone, buried under confusion. What the hell? How? I don't know. She stood, pacing, her breath hitching. My account, it's locked. I can't get in. She tried the app, the website, password rejected. This can't be happening, she muttered, tears stinging her eyes. She turned to him, desperate. You were on the phone with Sarah? Did you give her my login? Emma, no, he said, standing to, his voice firm. I told you I was joking. I didn't do anything. Then who did? She snapped. No one else knows. I showed you the email, Jake. You saw everything. Calm down, he said, reaching for her. I didn't touch your account. Maybe it's a glitch. Call them, call the site. She yanked away, dialing support, her hands trembling so hard she nearly dropped the phone. 30 minutes of hold music later, the rep's voice was flat, final. The tickets were transferred and resold. There's nothing we can do. Emma hung up, her legs giving out. She sank to the floor, the popcorn crunching under her knees. Jake crouched beside her, his hand hovering over her back. I'm so sorry. We'll fix this. Fix it, she choked out, looking up at him. His face was soft, worried, but his eyes wouldn't hold hers. You said you'd give them to Sarah? Was that really a joke? Emma, he said, his voice low. I swear, I didn't do this. But she didn't believe him. Not anymore. She grabbed her bag and stumbled out, the Tony Awards final notes mocking her as she fled into the night. Emma Harper spent the week after the Tony Awards in a fog. The Hamilton tickets, her lifeline to her mom, Diane, her $600 dream, were gone, snatched from her account like a cruel magic trick. She'd left Jake's apartment that night with tears streaking her face, the echo of his protests, I didn't do this, ringing hollow in her ears. She hadn't spoken to him since, ignoring his texts, can we talk? I'm sorry you're upset, and burying herself in extra shifts at Brew Haven. Sleep came in fits, her mind replaying his phone call with Sarah, his too quick laugh when she confronted him. Had it really been a joke? She wanted to believe him. She had to believe him, because the alternative meant she'd misjudged the one person she'd let into her world. On Friday, Jake called. She almost didn't pick up, but his voice on the voicemail was soft, pleading. I hate this. I miss you. Come to brunch with my family Sunday, 11 a.m. at the Sunnyside. They want to meet you. Please. She sat on her bed, staring at the phone, the photo of her and Diane at wicked propped against her lamp. Jake had been her rock these past 5 months, funny, warm, the guy who'd held her hand through late-night rants about work. Maybe she'd overreacted. Maybe he'd explain. She texted back a curt, okay, hoping it was a chance to clear the air, to meet his family, to feel normal again. Sunday morning, she stood outside the Sunnyside, a cozy diner with checkered curtains and the smell of bacon wafting through the air. She dressed up a little, jeans that weren't faded, a blue blouse she'd ironed twice, wanting to make a good impression. Jake greeted her at the door, his smile tentative but familiar, and pulled her into a hug. Thanks for coming, he murmured into her hair. She nodded, her chest tight, and followed him inside. The Torres family was already there, crowded around a long table. Jake's mom, Linda, a wiry woman with sharp cheekbones and a perm, his dad, Ray, broad and quiet, nursing a coffee, and Sarah, his sister, slouched in her seat, her brown hair pulled into a messy bun. Sarah was 27, a year older than Emma, and carried the weight of her recent divorce in the shadows under her eyes. Emma had met her once before, a brief hello at Jake's place, and remembered her as fragile, soft-spoken. The table buzzed with small talk, weather, baseball, until the food arrived, stacks of pancakes, scrambled eggs, a pitcher of orange juice. Emma relaxed a fraction, letting Jake's hand rest on her knee under the table. Then Linda turned to her, mid-bite of toast, her face splitting into a wide, grateful smile. "Emma," she said, her voice bright, "I just have to say thank you so much for giving Sarah those Hamilton tickets. That was such a sweet thing to do." The words hit like a punch. Emma's fork froze halfway to her mouth, a lump of egg trembling on the tines. The diner noise, clinking plates, laughter faded to a dull hum. She blinked at Linda, then swiveled to Jake, who'd suddenly found his plate fascinating, his head ducked low. "What?" she managed, her voice a rasp. I didn't give anyone tickets." The table went still. Linda's smile faltered, her brows knitting. Ray looked up from his coffee, puzzled. Sarah shifted in her seat, her gaze darting to Jake. "But," Sarah said, her voice small, "Jake said you were cool with it. He said you agreed." Emma's head snapped back to Jake, her heart slamming against her ribs. "Jake," she said, loud enough that a couple at the next table glanced over. "What did you tell them?" "Those were my tickets for me and Mom." Jake's face flushed, a deep red creeping up his neck. He set his fork down, slow and deliberate, and forced a laugh. Don't make a scene," he said, his tone light but strained. "Sarah's been through hell, divorce, no job. She needs this more than, you know. I figured you'd understand." "Understand?" Emma's voice cracked, rising. "Needs it more?" "Jake, I saved for a year. I sold my necklace, Mom's gift, to buy those. You knew what they meant." Her hand shook, the napkin in her lap crumpling as she clenched it. She could feel the tears building, hot and furious, but she wouldn't let them fall, not yet. Linda jumped in, her smile gone, replaced by a stern frown. "Now, Emma, hold on. Sarah's been crying herself to sleep every night. A night out could turn things around for her. You're young, you can get more tickets later." "More tickets?" Emma choked out, incredulous. "With what? I worked 12-hour shifts to afford those once. You don't get it. They weren't just tickets. They were for my mom, who raised me alone, who gave up everything for me." Ray cleared his throat, his voice gruff. "Sounds like you're being a little selfish here, hon. Family helps family. Sarah's family now. Selfish?" The words sliced through her. She turned to Sarah, who wouldn't meet her eyes, fiddling with her napkin. "Sarah, did you know? Did he tell you they were mine?" Sarah mumbled. "He said you didn't mind. That you had extras or something." "Extras?" Emma laughed, a bitter, broken sound. She stood, her chair scraping loud against the tile floor. "I don't have extras. I had 2 for me and Mom, and he took them." She glared at Jake, who still wouldn't look up, his jaw tight. "You lied to them. You lied to me. How did you even do it?" "My account. Did you hack it?" "Emma, stop," Jake snapped, finally meeting her gaze, his eyes hard. "I didn't hack anything. I logged in that night, okay? You left your phone unlocked once. I saw the password. I transferred them to Sarah's email. I didn't think you'd flip out like this." The confession landed like a brick. The diner spun, pancake syrup, coffee steam, the hum of strangers' chatter, all of it blurring as her world tilted. "You stole them," she whispered, then louder, "You stole them and gave them to her, then told everyone I was fine with it?" It's not stealing," he said, standing now, his hands out like he could calm her. "I was going to tell you, figure something out, get you new ones or whatever." Sarah needed a win. "A win," she echoed, tears spilling now, hot tracks down her cheeks. She swiped at them, furious. "What about my win? My mom's? You think I'm some charity case for your sister?" She looked around the table, Linda's scowl, Ray's disapproval, Sarah's guilty hunch, and felt like she'd walked into a trap. "You're all unbelievable," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm not the bad guy here." She grabbed her purse, the strap catching on the chair, and stormed out. Jake called after her, Wait." But she didn't stop. The bell above the door jangled as she burst into the sunlight, her sobs breaking free. She walked half a block before collapsing onto a bench, burying her face in her hands. $600. Months of sacrifice. Her mom's dream stolen, handed off like it was nothing, And she was the villain for caring. Her phone buzzed. Jake, probably, but she ignored it. She thought of Diane, her tired smile after a double shift, the way she'd hum Alexander Hamilton while scrubbing dishes. Emma couldn't tell her, not yet. But as the tears slowed, a fire sparked in her chest. She'd get those tickets back. She'd make this right. For Mom. Emma Harper stumbled out of the Sunnyside Diner, the bell above the door jangling like a taunt as she fled into the blinding June sunlight. Her chest heaved with sobs she couldn't hold back, her purse swinging wildly from her shoulder as she half walked, half ran down the street. The brunch with Jake's family replayed in her head like a bad movie. Linda's beaming. Thank you for giving Sarah the tickets. Sarah's meek. Jake said you agreed. Jake's flushed confession. I transferred them. I didn't think you'd flip out. And then the kicker. His family turning on her, calling her selfish, as if she were the one who'd betrayed them. She collapsed onto a splintered bench a block away, burying her face in her hands, tears soaking her palms. $600. Months of saving. Her mom's dream, stolen by the man she'd trusted, handed off to his sister like a consolation prize. Her phone buzzed in her bag. Jake, no doubt. But she let it ring out, the vibration a dull hum against her thigh. She thought of Diane, her mom, the woman who'd worked herself to the bone to give Emma a life worth living. Diane deserved those Hamilton tickets, deserved to sit under those Broadway lights and feel, for once, like the world was hers. Emma had poured her soul into making that happen. Extra shifts at Brew Haven, skipped nights out, selling the silver necklace Diane had given her at 18, a heart pendant she'd worn until it left a faint mark on her skin. And Jake had taken it all, with a shrug and a lie. She didn't know how long she sat there, the summer heat pressing down, cars rumbling past. Her phone buzzed again. 3 texts now, all Jake. I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd react like this. Can we talk? She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the reply button, but the words wouldn't come. Sorry. He wasn't sorry he'd done it. He was sorry she'd called him out. She locked the phone and shoved it back in her bag, her breath steadying as anger replaced the tears. She needed to get home, to think, to figure out what came next. The bus ride back to her apartment was a blur, stale air, a crying baby, the driver's radio crackling with static. She climbed the creaky stairs to her third-floor walk-up, the familiar smell of mildew and burnt toast greeting her as she fumbled with her keys. Inside, the place was small and worn. Peeling paint, a second-hand couch, a sink full of dishes, but it was hers. She dropped her bag by the door and sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of the fridge. She pulled out the photo of her and Diane at Wicked, the one she kept on her nightstand, and ran her thumb over her mom's smile. Diane's hair was darker then, her eyes bright despite the exhaustion of 2 jobs. Emma had been 15, all braces and bony elbows, clutching a torn ticket stub like a trophy. That night, Diane had whispered, "One day, kiddo, we'll see something big, Broadway big." Hamilton was supposed to be that something. Her phone buzzed again. Jake, calling now. She let it go to voicemail, his voice muffled as he left a message. Come on, pick up. I messed up, okay? I didn't mean to hurt you. She snorted, bitter. Didn't mean to hurt her? He'd logged into her account, transferred her tickets, lied to his family, and let them paint her as the villain, all because Sarah needed it more. She thought back to the Tony Awards night a week ago, his hushed call with Sarah, "I'll give you Emma's Hamilton tickets," and how she'd let him brush it off as a joke. She'd wanted to trust him, had built 5 months of late-night talks and lazy mornings around that trust. But it wasn't just the tickets he'd taken. It was her faith in him, her respect, the piece of her heart she'd carved out for their future. She couldn't sit still anymore. She grabbed her phone and dialed Diane, her fingers trembling as it rang. Her mom picked up on the second ring, her voice warm and rough from years of factory noise. "Hey, sweetheart. You okay? You sound off." Emma's throat tightened. She hadn't planned to tell her. Not yet. But the words spilled out, a flood she couldn't stop. "Mom, it's the tickets. The Hamilton tickets. They're gone. Jake. He took them, gave them to his sister. I found out today at brunch with his family. They all acted like I was wrong for being mad, like I'm selfish for wanting them back for us." There was a long pause, the sound of Diane's breathing steady on the other end. Then, soft but firm, "Oh, honey, How could he do that to you? Emma broke, sobs choking her words. I don't know. He said Sarah needed them more, her divorce, her mess. But they were ours, Mom. I worked so hard, and he didn't even ask. His mom thanked me, like I'd handed them over with a smile. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid, Diane said, her voice rising with that fierce edge Emma knew so well. You trusted him. That's not a flaw. It's who you are. But listen to me, Emma. You don't need anyone who'd hurt you like that. Not Jake, not his family. You're worth more than their excuses. Emma nodded, even though Diane couldn't see her, tears dripping onto the photo in her lap. I know, she whispered. You're right. I wanted it so bad for us. We'll get there, Diane said. Tickets or no tickets, we've got each other. That's what matters. They talked for an hour, about the brunch, Jake's lies, the way Linda had turned on her. Diane didn't sugarcoat it. He's a coward, Em. Taking what's yours and hiding behind his sister? That's not a man. By the time they hung up, Emma felt lighter, the fog lifting just enough to see a path forward. She opened Jake's texts, his apologies glowing on the screen, and typed a reply. We're done, Jake. You broke everything. Don't call me. She hit send before she could second-guess it, her hands steady now. He called anyway, 3 times, each one going to voicemail. Em, please, his voice cracked through the speaker. I didn't think it'd end us. I'll fix it, I swear. Just talk to me. She deleted the messages, her resolve hardening. He didn't get it, couldn't get it. It wasn't about fixing it now. It was about what he'd done, who he'd shown himself to be. She checked her ticket account one last time, a faint hope flickering. Maybe he'd transferred them back. But no, they were still gone, locked in Sarah's name on some secondary site. She'd fight for them later, call the company, plead her case. But for now, she had a plan. She logged into her bank app, counted her savings, $87. Not much, but a start. July was a month away. She'd pick up every shift she could, sell whatever she didn't need, claw her way back to those tickets. She and Diane would see Hamilton, together, no matter what Jake had taken. Emma leaned back, the photo of her and Diane still in her hands. She thought of Jake, his smile, his laugh, the man she'd loved, and felt a pang, sharp but fading. How could someone she'd let in so deep turn on her like that? She didn't have answers, only questions she'd carry for a while. Was she too harsh, cutting him off? Or was she right to choose her mom, herself, over a love that had crumbled under its own weight? She didn't know. But as she set the photo down and stood, a quiet strength settled in her bones. She'd figure it out, one step, one song, one dream at a time.